You've seen this building a million times, but have you ever thought about the beauty of what it represents? Under this dome, 535 Americans, chosen by the voters, gather together to steer our country forward. Some represent Beverly Hills. Some come from the Kansas Plains. Some represent inner-city Newark. Some hail from the heart of Appalachia. In this building, they are all equals, and they are all charged with a common task: finding solutions, forging compromise, and writing the laws that will shape the lives of over 330 million people. Just one slight hitch: they're not super interested in doing that job anymore. It's one of America's proudest traditions, sending people from throughout the nation to represent us in Congress. Another proud American tradition, telling those people precisely how much they suck. Now, look, Americans have never exactly been in love with politicians, but we seem to reserve a special contempt for the legislative branch. For proof, you only need to look at the polls. Since the year 2000, the Supreme Court's approval rating has been as high as 62% and as low as 40%. The president's approval rating has been as high as 89% and as low as 25%. As for Congress, it hasn't had an approval rating over 50% for more than 20 years. And in fact, polling has also shown, and we are not making this up, that Congress is less popular than cockroaches, colonoscopies, and, this one really hurts, Nickelback. Look at this graph. On the plus side, though, they did poll better than the Ebola virus. So, that's something. But this is a little weird, right? I mean, to get into Congress, you literally have to win a popularity contest, so why are they so unpopular? Well, there are really two sets of issues here. One where this isn't really Congress's fault, and one where it's very much Congress's fault. Congress isn't really to blame, for example, for the common criticism that it doesn't do enough or doesn't move fast enough, because, well, that's kind of the nature of the job. Here's what we mean. Members of Congress are in Washington to represent the views of wildly different swaths of the population. In 2020, the country's most conservative congressional district in Alabama voted over 80% Republican. Its most progressive one, in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., went nearly 90% Democrat. Those two sets of views, and everything in between, are represented in Congress. So, if it seems like they have a hard time agreeing on anything, that's probably because the people they represent have a hard time agreeing on anything. But if a tendency towards gridlock is just a sign that Congress is doing its job, some of the other problems are about Congress not doing its job. After all, it's worth remembering that the Founding Fathers intended Congress to be the strongest branch of government. Not the president's sidekick, not even a co-equal branch, as you often hear. As one of the intellectual architects of the Constitution, James Madison, put it, in our system of government, the legislative authority necessarily predominates. Translation: because they most directly represent the people, Congress is supposed to be in the driver's seat. In fact, the biggest worry the founders had about Congress was that they had created a branch so strong that it might grow to dominate the other two. And here's the thing about that fear. No. Today, Congress is arguably the weakest branch of government. So, what happened? Well, part of the problem came from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. For over a century now, presidents have steadily expanded their powers at Congress's expense. To give you a tangible sense of how this plays out, consider the following. During the presidencies of Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, there were enormous changes to immigration policy. Mass amnesties, huge increases and later decreases in the number of people being turned away at the border. And yet during that time, Congress didn't pass a single law on any of these topics. None of our voices were heard. One guy decided for the entire country. And here's the thing. It's bad that Congress has lost a lot of its power, but what's even worse is that it doesn't seem to want any of it back. And if that seems weird, think about it from the perspective of the members of Congress. If something goes wrong, people will blame the president, not you. If you don't vote on any controversial issues, that just means fewer attacks that can be made against you during your re-election campaign. Fewer tough choices, fewer problems. That's what's led one prominent scholar to say Congress is weak because its members want it to be. And if you look at the day-to-day operations of the body, you see exactly how weak it is. Even when Congress does occasionally do the work of lawmaking, most members don't have much of a say in what happens. In the past, most of the real work of Congress was done in committees, where lots of members with specialized expertise could help shape legislation. In recent decades, however, most of the legislative branch's power has been centralized with just a small handful of party leaders. When Congress passed a major tax law in 1986, for example, it went through at least 30 days of committee hearings in both the House and the Senate. When they passed another major tax law in 2017, there wasn't a single committee meeting. The Senate approved the almost 500-page bill only a few hours after receiving it. So, what do members of Congress spend their time on instead? Mostly fundraising and running for re-election. One survey of House members found that they only spend about 35% of their time on the policy-making tasks for which they're elected. And in reality, even most of that work is done by their staff members, who are, on average, between 25 and 29 years old. That's right, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the country is actually run by these guys. Bottom line, Congress exists to represent us. So when they give their power away, they're really giving our power away. And if we want that to change, we have to vote for different kinds of politicians. Ones who want to represent their voters rather than spending all their time fundraising or being on TV. And if they won't do that, we can replace them with someone more popular. You know who we're talking about.